Hi, my name is Jarryd Judd and welcome to the Data Standards Body. Today we're going to explore version 117 of the Consumer Data Standards and the major release and improvements that it's brought to the latest version of the Consumer Data Standards. Starting off, to explore version 117 of the Consumer Data Standards, we're going to go to the Standards landing page. Here you can see that the version has been updated on the main page, but what we'll do to truly explore all the new improvements to the new standards is jump to the changelog. Now you can find that on the left hand side of the menu here. We'll go down, select that as our first option, and then on the changelog page, which stores all the historical changes that have been published as part of the Consumer Data Standards process of change, you can find up the top the latest release. As you can see, this release was introduced on the 23rd of May 2022. Now in that entry, you can see there's two links, one to release notes and the other to decision proposal 237. What we'll do is we'll select release notes for that option today. Once you've selected that and the page is loaded, you can see all the changes that have been added as part of version 117 of the Consumer Data Standards. There are a few changes this time around. We've included the links to all of the different GitHub entries or issues that have been included as part of the Consumer Data Standards version 117 release. Most importantly, as part of this, we've included the entry to the decision proposal 237. This decision proposal covered all the changes included in and around and a part of maintenance iteration 10. You have a read through that to find all the different discussion points and the final decision made by the Data Standards Body Chair. Above that, you can see all the different issues ranging from issue 504 all the way down to issue 167. This covers two repositories that these changes are drawn for. One is the standards maintenance, which most of you are familiar with, and the second is the standards staging. Some you may not be so familiar with. This is our staging environment and allows us to stage what the standards would look like as we make changes. This is a great opportunity for you as a community member to participate and see this staging environment grow as we make changes. However, for now, these is often where we catch some last minute documentation or errata that needs to be changed before we publish it live. And you can see a list of it all there. You can click each of these links and it'll take you off to that repository as well, an entry so you can have a read through it. However, let's get stuck in. Up first, we have the high level standards. Here we have a number of different changes, ranging from our endpoint versioning schedule, obligation dates, some common field types, some engine changes, we'll touch on more about those later, and some registry spent dependencies schedules. Now, these are all covered off in great detail, and we won't dive into each individual one. I'll let you have the fun exploring each of those, but there are some key areas that need to be touched on around the obligation dates. First up is there's now an option to select a date picker. So if you were, from this entry here, to select the endpoint versioning schedule and have that page load in front of you, you'll now see a large table with lots of different entries available to it. Now, in the right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little option that pops up that has obligations at and then an end date and has collapse obligations as well as a legend. So this is what we're going to use. Now, if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll get to the endpoint version schedule. You'll have things like data holder, you'll have heaps of different entries and a lot of data in front of you. This can be quite overwhelming. So this is what this feature is exploring in terms of making it easier. Now, back to that little box that's floating around the top right-hand corner, what you can do is you select your end date. Now, let's say, for argument's sake, let's go select the 1st of November. We all know that's a significant date. Selecting that will now change the page and you'll see it updated, with some entries marked as grey, some as green, some as, let's call it yellow, maybe a little bit orange, some blue, and then also highlighting and crossing out some. Now you might ask, okay, that's great. What does all this markup now mean? Now on that little pop-up box, you'll see legend against it. Now if you click on that, you'll have a little light box pop up and give you some further explanation. And there are 5 key areas. First is future, around obligations that are due more than 3 months into the future. Second is emerging, obligations that are due within the next 3 months. Third is active, obligations that must currently be supported. Fourth is deprecated, obligations that are being phased out and have entered into deprecation phase before being retired. And finally, retired, obligations that have expired or are superseded and are no longer need to be supported. And that's your legend to reading this out. Great to keep on hand, just to keep an eye on what's being added to that endpoint version schedule. And you can click outside that light box and it takes you back to the obligation date schedule. We hope that's a really an awesome change that's made it easier to read that table and get a grasp for all the different schedules and endpoint versioning that you need to keep across as you approach your different go live date. That's in the high level standards, and that was a significant piece that was added in. Then jumping to API endpoints. As part of the API endpoints, there's been a lot of changes included for the energy sector. These have been worked through as part of the standards maintenance, and we appreciate all the input that each of the members have included. You can see a list here that have ranged from adding time zone fields to the energy plan tariff period, all the way through to adding in a XFAPI interaction ID header that is mandatory for the energy secondary data holder APIs. These were sometimes documentation issues, some were modifying the energy allocation. These are all important changes and have been included as part of community input as well as community consultations. On top of this, we've also added in the CDR register APIs endpoint version schedule that touches on the similar area that we were before, and then a number of changes to the register APIs. Again, a lot of changes here are focusing on the energy sector, and so if you're working in that area, it is best to keep across these changes. Up next, we have the information security profile. This touches on a broad ranges of area and go into a lot of detail. What we'll touch on today is some high level areas of where changes have been made, and you can follow through by clicking on each of the entries which link back to the GitHub issue where the issue was first raised, or change request or error that was raised, then explored as part of the community, worked through, consulted upon, and then added into the standards that you see today. You can click the link on the far right hand corner and that takes you to that section and allow you to look at the diff, which remember is on the right hand side, that shows you the changes that have been made to that section, including text and or code that has been added to that particular area. So things that we see here are the CDR arrangement revocation endpoint, self-signed JWT client authentication, some of the data holder responsibility, and the registration validation. And finally, as part of the consumer experience, we've included a section on the OIDC contact detail claims. This has been a hot topic that has been explored and adds to and improves the profile scope area. This was covered in Standards Maintenance 504 and was an important part that has been part of multiple conversations, including the CDR implementation call and the maintenance iteration. That wraps up the changes today for version 1.17.0 of the Consumer Data Standards. Thank you very much for your input. Thank you for being part of the Consumer Data Standards. Hopefully this has been useful. Hopefully there's been some great improvements to the Consumer Data Standards and the way you read it. As always, enjoy, and I'll catch you online.